Ryan, let's get down to business. We'll talk about the Manitobans in a minute. Rutger McGroarty, 14th overall, and then the most Canadian-sounding Finn of all time, Brad Lambert, at the 30th selection. Both of these guys came into the year as top prospects. McGroarty sort of stayed in that middle tier of the first round, and Lambert somehow fell to the Jets at 30. I mean, what was the reaction around with the colleagues on those two picks for Winnipeg, and what do you think when you got the chance to talk to them and hear from Kevin Cheveldayoff?
Yeah, super interesting on a lot of front. McGroarty is super interesting, Huss. I mean, really high energy guy in terms of how he handled himself with the media. Interesting player. Really offensive, scored more than 50 goals last year, even though he's known as a two-way player and a physical guy. Love the way he conducts himself. And here's the other thing, Huss. He knows he has he needs to improve his skating game, and he knows it, and he's working with Barb Underhill. So to me, that's good self-awareness. But great attitude. He's a leader, and he's a guy the Jets are going to be able to lean on once he comes out of the University of Michigan. We know the Jets have had good success with that program. In terms of Lambert, loved the way he attacked the fact he was a guy who dropped. He said, just as quickly as I fell this year, I'm going to be back on the rise. So I love the confidence and the exuberance. He's confident in his game. He knows his skating is among the best in this draft class. He's probably going to play for the Seattle Thunderbirds of the Western Hockey League next season after a tough year over in Liga. But this is a guy that's going to go to a team that's excellent and be a dominant kind of player. Just spoke with Mark Hillier. He was fired up to be able to get him. He outwardly said he knew it was a tough year. Otherwise, he's not available at 30. But they trust in the player, and his skating ability and finishing ability was something that really caught their attention.
Now, you mentioned Seattle. Do you think he was playing against men last year. Might he be an option for the Moose?
He would be an option, technically, but for me, Huss, I think because of the situation Seattle will be in, Seattle is going to be like the Winnipeg Ice on the other side in the Western League. They're going to be among the teams that are going to be chasing the Memorial Cup. So I think that they'd probably rather have him in that junior hockey situation. But the Moose would certainly be an option, and we know that they don't have a ton of the high-end skilled players at that level. They have a lot of prospects up front, but they don't have those finishers necessarily. So, but to me, I think the Western League is probably the primary option right now. So we'll see what happens and how that develops.
Well, tell us a little bit more about what Mark Hillier had to say. I always love hearing him after the draft on who they picked. And listen, I know we've talked about the first rounder, but let's talk about a couple of the top selections today. Elias Salmonsson, who I believe Bob McKenzie had 14th going into the season, and a very interesting Russian-born playing for Canadian player from the OHL, Danny Zhilkin, at 77th overall. What do we learn about those two new additions to the fold?
Yeah, Salmonsson, really nice kid as well. And he's a guy who mentioned Adam Larson as a guy he likes to pattern his game after. Skilled guy, but also plays with a bit of an edge. Zhilkin is super interesting. What a story. 9 years old. He comes over for a camp. They're so impressed by him that he moves his family from Russia at 9 years old to chase his NHL dream. And even that, he didn't think the NHL was a possibility for him until about 3 years ago. So really outgoing kid. He did a great job with Team Canada recently. I think they beat Russia at one of those tournaments, which is really special for him. Good two-way player, great finisher, good skater. I was very impressed by him as well. And the other part on the scene here, Huss, the goalie that just got selected by the Jets in the 7th round. What a scene. This place is clearing out. Most people have either been picked or won't be picked. His name gets called, and the place goes bonkers. There's like a group of 20 or 30 friends and family members around him, and he's just really fired up about the experience. I talked about, loving Carey Price as a goalie growing up, and he said, now I'm going to have to watch Connor Hellebuck a little bit more. So really interesting on a lot of fronts. And then Fabian Wagner, the Swedish player, really good two-way center is what we heard about him. And then Garrett Brown is a guy who won a USHL championship with Sioux City this year. Big, strong guy on the back end, pretty mobile. And he'll be going to the University of Denver, I believe, the reigning Frozen Four champion. So a nice variety pack. We knew the Jets were looking to replenish. And Mark Hillier was thrilled by the fact they had 7 picks, and they were able to get something at every position, a little bit of variety. The one thing that Hillier said about McGroarty, he's the kind of player they don't have a lot of, the power forward. You know, we're used to the Jets taking these fast and skilled guys in the first round. Here's a guy that has the offensive ability, but also a two-way game and like that true bona fide power forward element that the Jets don't have a ton of in their organization.
Well, and I mean, listen, we all know what was the feeling around this team last year. The energy that he brought to the podium, to the draft, and seemingly to the team. I mean, it feels infectious. And I've seen a lot of people, and again, no one knows anything about these players. Let's face it, the vast majority, unless you're a scout, you don't know. But I will say this, that is something that absolutely was lacking with the Winnipeg Jets last year. And whenever he presumably becomes a Winnipeg Jet, any team would love to have that sort of a player and that sort of energy. And you hope that it is infectious for the other guys in the locker room.
Yeah, and there's a leadership element component to that too, Huss, right? He was the captain of the under-18 team for Team USA, and that's not a surprise or not an accident. We know this has been something looked at in the floor before with Adam Lowry, with Andrew Kopp, Jacob Trouba, guys like that. So, but I'm with you. The high energy is really impressive to watch, and I think it's important. As you mentioned, we've talked about this a lot. They have a lot of positive guys, but they had this dark cloud the last little while, the last couple of years. So I think it's important that they draft guys that are excited. And, you know, they've had guys that have had the departure from the organization, even though they also have had guys to commit long term. So I think it's a good variety pack that they filled in here.